Sziasztok, and welcome back to the Hungarian Heritage Podcast, Season 4. It means so much to have you here with me again, and if this is your first time tuning in, I'm so glad that you're here. This podcast has always been a journey, not just through Hungarian people, places, food, and culture, but through the heart of what connects us all, our stories, our memories, and the pride we carry in who we are and where we come from. This season, I'll be introducing you to new friends and revisiting familiar voices who share a passion for preserving and celebrating Hungarian heritage. Together, we'll reflect on how traditions are preserved and how our Hungarian identity evolves and how we can pass this rich culture to the next generation so it doesn't just live in the past, but thrives in the future. Each episode will continue to reflect the flavors passed down through generations to the stories that carry our pride and history. Some stories will make you laugh, others might bring a tear to your eye, but all of them will reflect the beauty of what it means to be part of the Hungarian experience. I am filled with enthusiasm and honor to continue this journey with all of you as we connect the circles of Hungarians around us and make this community, Hungarian heritage, stronger than ever. Welcome to this episode of the Hungarian Heritage Podcast. And today, there is no guest. It's just me, your host, Christine, and I'm here to talk about preserving heritage. And I want to slow things down a little bit and talk about something deeply personal. As this is episode 3 of season 4, I think it's important to talk about discovering our heritage, what makes us think about it, and how we choose to preserve it in our own lives. For many of us living outside of Hungary with Hungarian heritage, the heritage isn't always something that we actively think about every day. Maybe it is, but maybe not for everyone. But somehow, it always finds a way to show up in memories, traditions, food, language, or even a feeling we can't quite put into words. So I've been thinking lately, as we move forward in this season, about how much of who we are lives in the really small things in our lives, not the big moments, even though the big moments are also important. So not the big moments that we post about, but a lot of times it's in the quiet ones. The way a place sounds in the morning, the phrases people use without thinking, the stories that come out only when you sit with someone long enough. And for a long time, many people may have thought, myself included, that heritage was something formal, something that lived in museums or old books or in the photo albums from our family. But I'm realizing that it's also the things we don't think to save. So this episode isn't just about having all the answers. It's more of a reflection on what heritage means, what we're losing without noticing, and how telling our own stories might be one way of holding on. So heritage preservation is really a hot topic. Those are very big buzzwords, the preservation part. And it isn't only about old buildings or museums. It's about lived experiences, memories, and identity. So what does heritage really mean? It might mean different things to different people. It might show up in language, food, traditions, stories, places, and it's about everyday people, not just the institutions that are working hard to preserve it. So I think as we move forward, it's really important to think about how losing heritage affects communities and families, both emotionally and socially. And it's important to remember a moment or the moments when you realize that heritage mattered to you. So what makes us think about our heritage? Often it's something small. Maybe it's a recipe that's been passed down through generations. One your grandmother used to make, the kind that instantly brings you back to her kitchen. Maybe it's hearing the Hungarian language spoken somewhere unexpected, or that's happened to me, especially during travel. You could be in an airport or on a vacation, someplace you wouldn't even think to hear someone Hungarian, and wouldn't you know, we were in a taxi headed toward a ferry, and the couple next to us was speaking in Hungarian. So it's moments like that that make us think about our heritage. And sometimes it's a family story that gets told over and over again, each time revealing something new. Sometimes heritage becomes more important during big life moments, having children, losing loved ones, or realizing that if we don't ask questions now, some stories may be lost forever. And I'm going to say that again. If we don't ask questions now, some stories may be lost forever. And that's pretty impactful. So for anyone that has been teetering on the edge of starting to research their genealogy, or you haven't really written down that recipe from grandma or your mom or your dad, don't hesitate. Make sure you do it. Heritage has a way of gently tapping us on the shoulders and reminding us of who we are and where we're from. So it's really important that it's not just during the big life moments, but it's during the small ones too, that we start to remember and we start to record so that as we go forward, we can pass that along to our children and grandchildren. Now, discovering heritage doesn't look the same for everyone, and that's okay because we all have different experiences. We may have family that immigrated at the same time, for example, during 56, so we have a shared family experience. But if you've listened to many of the episodes on this podcast, you'll hear that many people have a similar reason to be connected to their Hungarian heritage, but all of their experiences are different. So discovering heritage doesn't have to look the same for everyone, and that's okay. For some, it's deeply rooted. You may have grown up with two Hungarian parents, so you may have more of that authentic feeling that was coming from your households. You grew up with Hungarian traditions, celebrations, and language. But for others, it's something that maybe you discover later in life, or maybe you had it as a young child. And then once some of your older family members passed, you started to lose it for a little while. So, or maybe after moving away, or maybe realizing how little you were taught growing up. We have all of these different things, and maybe all of these apply to you, or maybe just some of them apply to you. But some people feel a strong connection emotionally, and others feel curiosity, nostalgia, or even conflict. Many of us have conflict in our memories about our heritage, and it's important to identify those as well. There is no right or wrong way to explore your Hungarian heritage. It is a personal journey. And I think one really big important part of discovering and preserving your Hungarian heritage is community. You have to find your community no matter where you are. Some people are fortunate enough to live close to a strong Hungarian community with cultural groups, churches, events, or regular gatherings that make staying connected feel more natural and shared and much easier to make happen. But so many people don't live near those types of communities. But that doesn't mean that the connection is lost. It just means that you have to be more intentional about discovering and trying to be connected to a community. And you know what? Community might look different for different people. It might be an online space, a podcast like this one, or quiet traditions that you've practiced at home. And sometimes community is something we create ourselves, because if there isn't one there, maybe you have to create it on your own. I've spoken to a few people that have had similar situations, that moved to areas where there weren't a lot of other Hungarian people. So they sought them out in their high school class or in churches. They connect with people to feel that little bit of connection of culture. And sometimes community is something we create by sharing our culture with friends, neighbors, or family members who didn't grow up with it at all. No matter where you live, you're not alone in wanting to feel connected. Heritage has a way of bringing people together, even across distance. Heritage connection looks different for different people. For me personally, one of the strongest connections I have to my Hungarian heritage is food. Some of my most meaningful memories come from standing at the apron strings of my grandmother, watching, learning, and cooking alongside her. And when I mean cooking alongside her was, she would have me bread the pork chops before she put it in the frying pan, or she would give me a little piece of dough with a small rolling pin as she was rolling out the noodles for whatever dish she was creating that day. So it was really just being exposed to the cooking because for many of you, no, measurements aren't really in the Hungarian language. So I recall trying to write down exactly how to make stuffed cabbage, and I stood next to my grandmother as an adult, and she couldn't give me a measurement. I'm like, "Well, how much is that? How much of this do you put in it?" She's like, "Well, like, look how much I'm shaking in to the pan, and then you can figure out how much that is." So, I'm pretty sure that a lot of you have that same experience that you know the ingredients, but the measurements, you have to work with a few times before you solidify exactly what the measurements are to recreate those dishes. So I've been incredibly lucky to also visit Hungary many times over the past 10 years, and each visit deepened my understanding, not just of the culture, but of the food itself. So eating in authentic places, tasting traditional dishes that I had eaten growing up my whole life, but tasting them the way they were meant to be made, especially after my grandmother passed, was very meaningful to me because for a very long time, more than 10 years, I was unable to taste those foods because she had gotten too old to make them and then she passed. So I've been very lucky to do that, to be able to go back and to taste them again. And now, as an adult, I can figure out, like, okay, I see the ingredients in this dish. I could probably recreate this. And my recipes have definitely improved because of those experiences. I know there are definitely times I've cooked for friends who have no Hungarian heritage whatsoever, and cooking those foods was a way of me sharing my culture with them and talking about the food and talking about how I learned these recipes. And just last week, I have to say that I received what might be the highest compliment I've ever gotten in relation to my cooking. I made goulash soup, something I've been cooking almost every week this winter at the request of my son. And when my husband got home from work, he walked through the garage door into the kitchen. He stopped and he said, "It smells like Hungary in here." That moment really stayed with me. It confirmed something I've always felt that food is one of my primary ways of remembering my Hungarian heritage, my family, and the traditions that shaped me. Through cooking, I'm not just feeding my family, but I'm preserving a culture that I'm deeply proud of. And I've already been asked by my son, can I teach him how to make this? And of course, I will do that to make sure that he can take that recipe as well as my daughter going forward so that they will always remember their Hungarian heritage. Truth be told, I've already started exposing my granddaughter to little cooking things that she watches me do, and I look forward to being able to teach her how to cook these recipes, these authentic Hungarian recipes, as she gets older. So, preserving heritage might feel challenging, but it can also be fun and it can be intentional. Preservation for you might be cooking Hungarian meals and sharing them with family and friends. It might be relearning the language or even just a few words. It might be celebrating holidays or customs or passing down stories or maybe even teaching children about their heritage and where they come from. And I think one of the most important things is that you don't need funding or authority. And this word I spoke about with a recent guest that's coming up on the podcast. You don't need authority to preserve your heritage. Small intentional acts matter, and those are the most important things for you. There are a lot of practical ideas that you can employ by recording stories, audio, video written from your family members, from your elders' stories, photographs, preserving recipes, singing songs, supporting local heritage organizations and archives, and most of all, teaching children the why behind these traditions. Heritage doesn't have to be frozen in time. It can evolve while still honoring the past. So, when we preserve our heritage, we're not just looking backward, we're building a bridge to the future. Our connection to Hungarian culture helps shape identity, resilience, values, and belonging. By choosing to keep those connections alive, we're giving future generations something powerful, a sense of where they come from, and a deeper understanding of who they are. So even small efforts matter. Even imperfect ones matter. Heritage isn't about doing everything perfectly. It's about remembering, honoring, and choosing connection in whatever way feels right for you. As you go about your day, I invite you to reflect, what does your Hungarian heritage mean to you? And how do you choose to carry it forward and preserve it for the next generation? I remember thinking this was just normal, that my heritage would always be there. I didn't think to ask questions. I didn't think to record it, nor did we have a lot of opportunity to do that with the technology when I was younger. So now, looking back, I realize how fragile those moments were, how much meaning they held. And even if I didn't have the language for it yet, it's important to think about it now. I think heritage survives when someone decides that something is worth remembering, not because it's perfect or impressive or important to everyone else, but because it mattered to you. If you're listening to this, maybe there's a story in your life you've never thought of as heritage. Maybe it's just something familiar. I invite you to notice it, ask about it, record it, even if it's just on your phone, because one day that ordinary moment might be the thing that someone wishes they still had. It might turn into your "it smells like Hungary in here" moment. And I'm going to leave you with this thought. What story would disappear if you didn't tell it? What story about your Hungarian heritage would no longer be there for the next generation if you didn't write it down? So think about that as we go forward and continue with season 4 and talk about all the things we always talk about with our guests, as well as how we can micro focus on preserving our Hungarian heritage. As we move forward into season 4, I will also be returning with more thoughts about preserving heritage, and I will be sharing more stories and anecdotes of my family's preservation journey, as I will not only share stories about my family from the past, I will tell you some stories about the recent connections I have made when I found my family in Hungary. Or did they find me? I guess you'll have to tune in to find out. I will also read some excerpts of my family's immigration story that was recently published in Volume 2 of Hungarian Roots and American Dreams. I am very much looking forward to these personal episodes that I will be sharing with you in between my interview episodes. There are a lot of conversations to be had, and I'm looking forward to sharing and talking about all of them with you. And maybe parts of my story will resonate with you about your Hungarian heritage story. Thanks for joining me on this episode of the Hungarian Heritage Podcast. I hope that you found inspiration in our discussion about preserving Hungarian heritage, no matter when you start your journey. If you have feedback or questions about this episode, or you would like to contact me at the podcast, you will also find that information in the show notes. If you've enjoyed this episode and you're interested in learning more about this Hungarian heritage community, please don't hesitate to reach out. I would love to hear from you. Our theme music is Hungarian Dance by Pony Music, used with special license from Envato Market. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, make sure you stay Hungarian heritage strong. Sziasztok!